morning to you and a few familiar faces that I see in the audience. My name is Adrian Marlowe. I'm Managing Director of Lawspeed. If we can get the PowerPoint running, that would be great. Okay. That's it. Thank you very much. So just for a second. And I'm here to talk to you this morning about that wonderful word compliance that seems to be on the tips of everyone's tongue in terms of the recruitment industry at the moment. Now my organisation, Lawspeed, has been servicing the recruitment industry for 15 years. When I started up in 1997, no one had identified the difference between recruitment law and employment law. And since then, the regulations in relation to recruitment have grown enormously. And what's been talked about over the last 5, 6, 7 years is how to comply. We have to comply more. We have to improve our standards. And what I wanted to do was to give you our take on the issue of compliance. So what I'm hoping to cover today is compliance and its meaning, why it's important, the indicators of the steps required for compliance, and this is just our sort of tips to you in terms of what you could be doing, how to protect your business, which is at the heart of everything you as finance directors will be concerned about, of course, and even greater than that, how you secure profitability. So the very first question I have for you, would anyone like to suggest what they understand by the meaning of the word compliance? Anyone want to sort of put their thoughts up on that? Most people would regard compliance as a strict adherence to legislation and rules. I'm sure most of you wouldn't disagree with that. However, whilst obviously adherence to legislation is important, some rules are difficult to adhere to. For example, under the conduct regulations, when I'm referring to conduct regulations, I mean the conduct of employment agencies, employment business regulations. There's a limit to how many times you can say that in a day, frankly. But there's a requirement, as you probably know, under those regulations to obtain, for example, any, underline that word, any, which means all and any, risk to health or safety known to the hirer, and then pass it on to a candidate. Since you are entirely reliant on the hirer, if you ask the question, to give you the information, how can you fully comply? How can you control the information that comes to you from them? Particularly, as you're probably aware, most hirers are pretty reluctant to give any information of that nature about their organisations. And it goes without saying that you soon lose business if you deploy waterboarding techniques to extract the information from your clients. In fact, the reality is, all you can do is ask about health and safety issues, and then whatever you get, you pass it on. But I'm sure you'll recognise that in doing that, technically, you may be in breach of the rules. So in making your decision to address the issue of that particular regulation in that way, what you're doing is looking at the technical compliance and then making a judgment as to how to deal with it in a realistic way by assessing the benefit of conducting business in a potentially non-compliant way against the risk of a claim or some kind of investigation arising from that. So it's not total strict adherence to regulation. And then you set a reasonable standard once you've made those judgments. And that's what I prefer to call commercial compliance, which is where we come from. This is compliance with a set of rules that match legislation as far as is reasonably possible, but which also match commercial reality. And at the same time, having rules applicable in your organisation to ensure that it operates in the way that you want it to in order to secure and protect the business that you're undertaking. Now that last aspect, having the rules applicable in your organisation, is crucial for successful operations in a way you don't need me to tell you that. But what I am talking to you about is therefore commercial compliance. So when I'm saying compliance today, I'm talking commercial compliance. That is a set of rules that are essential to maintain and secure profitability. Now, because we live in a digital age, and you will have seen from the opening slide that I'm talking to you about compliance in a digital age, there can be more of a problem. People working from home, that's not necessarily particularly new, using mobile phones, iPads, any other kind of device in which through which you're conducting business. There can be more problems in relation to that, and I'm going to come back to that. Making money, what your consultants do to achieve the income for your business that leads to you raising an invoice is a sales issue, which I can't comment on, but how that invoice is raised and the process that leads up to it is all about compliance. Securing the benefit of the work done is what it's all about. And there are three different ways of securing that benefit. First of all, again, you will know this, having the right terms in place with your client is crucial. And that means either having your own default terms that fully protect your transactions with clients, and a process for getting those terms out to the client at the right time and accepted. That is just as important as ensuring that any terms that your client sends you are acceptable to you against the criteria you set for your business. That would mean that they're not too onerous on liability, and of course it would mean that the terms protect your fees on placements. And once again, having a process in place for making sure that those client-owned terms are acceptable. Now, we live in a digital age, so everyone's focusing on digital solutions to save time and process. For example, let's say that you recognise in your organisation that too much time is being spent on chasing up clients to get them to sign off contracts you've sent out. So you're attracted by a solution, perhaps an online solution, an in-the-cloud solution in order to overcome this process. And let's say that that process involves automatically sending out your client terms of business to your client, and then the system that you've taken on board gets that client to accept the terms on your behalf. So your consultants don't really have to do anything about it. It sounds extremely attractive. In fact, what could be better? And surely that would overcome difficulties and time wasted in chasing everyone up. The reality is that kind of system could be potentially fraught with problems. The reason why is because you might lose control of the process if it's hosted anywhere else. You might be giving up flexibility for rigidity by ruling out other methods of acceptance. For example, having a trigger in your trigger action in your client terms, which means that the client can accept the terms in some way other than sending you an email back or making a phone call to say, I accept these terms. Clients, if they're subjected to the sort of system I talked about, may get hacked off with getting reminder emails. You haven't signed the terms yet. Please come to our website and sign them. They may get hacked off if they're required, for example, to sign them with a Microsoft-approved digital signature. And because of that rigid process that you've signed up to, because it all looks absolutely glorious, you might lose business. When in reality, you could have had acceptance terms in place that don't require chasing up, using the sort of trigger action that I referred to. You could retain control of the process by having your process resolved in-house, not externally. And you could have a seamless process for dealing with clients that doesn't introduce obstacles. And I can give you an example, actually. A client of ours I went to see fairly recently had signed up for a system provided by a payroll provider that was all singing and all dancing. And they got the terms of business which we provided to our client with the trigger action loaded onto this system. So when a placement came in, or potential placement came in, out went the terms that required the client to create a digital signature, log on to the payroll services website, log in, accept the terms of the contract. So I said to my client, how's that working for you? And they said, well, actually, not that well. We often have to chase clients to get them to go onto the website to sign the digital signature. So I said, well, what's the advantage to you? He said, well, it's all automated, so it's all working well. I said, but it's not though, is it? Because you're chasing your client up, you're doing exactly what you did before. Not the least that the system that had been set up required the client to accept it by the method I just described, when in fact, in the contract he was using, there was a trigger action, as I've described, which we'd set up for them, so they needn't do any of those things. So there was a huge amount of conflict. And I mentioned the word obstacles. In facilitating business, what you're trying to do is to remove obstacles from doing the business and helping the client achieve what it wants, as well as retain your fees. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Removing obstacles from doing the business. The digital revolution purports to facilitate it, but I question whether it really does. Now, still on the matter of securing benefit of work you've done, there's a second aspect. Ensuring that regulations are complied with. The main regulations are the ones I've described, and I'm not going to repeat the full name again. Some specific sectors, of course, have additional rules. Being conversant with the regulations is crucial to enable you to understand risk involved, thus enabling you to assess the benefits of conducting business in a particular way. A reminder here, under the agency regulations, hirers and candidates, and indeed third parties, can bring civil claims against an offending organisation that breaches the regulations. Just a little reminder there. I think most people have probably forgotten about that. I can give you an example here of a client of ours that had made a supply code placement for a health and safety contractor onto a building site for the purposes of restoring health and safety order on that building site. And our client hadn't asked about health and safety risks, other than the general inquiries and anything we need to know about. No, everything's quite normal. 3 weeks into the job, this site manager walked off site complaining that he had not been told that there had been an accident several weeks beforehand, someone falling off scaffolding. And he complained to the EAS, and the client then refused to pay the agency's money because the process had not been followed. I think that's an interesting example. We had to do a fair bit of work on our client's behalf in that particular case. We managed to get them out from under the EAS, and we also managed to get the client money in the end. But it cost our client our fees, of course, in being able to recover the position for them. So normally, in terms of fees, how do you experience a client taking advantage of some kind of breach? It is to do with fees. They'll use breaches of the rules or breaches of your contract to argue against making payment. You all know that. They might also use timeline issues, for example, if there's an argument about who sent the CV in first. So therefore, it's really important to follow the third aspect, the third tip I'll give you. Recording your processes is absolutely crucial, as well as having the right terms in place. Now, I've lost count of the number of times over the years where we've had clients of ours coming to us and saying their hirer client will not pay the placement fee because they received the CV from another agency. And then they tell me that the candidate has said they've not instructed any other agency. I've seen it over and over and over again. So knowing the timing of when you did send that candidate's CV up to the client is absolutely crucial. And having terms in place that mean that the candidate's CV is accepted as having been received from you within a certain time period is also crucial to overcome that problem. Problems exacerbated more recently because hirers are now saying, I got the CV off a job board, or I was sent the CV by a candidate themselves using over my mobile phone, or that sort of thing. You see all these arguments coming up, you need to deal with it very, very comprehensively in your terms. Your system should show the date sent, not, as I've seen again and again when I've been looking at client systems, a date field. You go into your recruitment software and you look at the date when the document was sent, it should have the actual date on it, not a date field, because guess what? The date field shows today. And so you then have to waste time looking back to see when it was actually sent. The recorded date should be on the document. It's a small but important point, but it can save the claim and it can certainly save costs should the client argue the toss. Now, the digital age, smartphones, iPads, laptops, home working arrangements, none of which may necessarily be linked to your central servers or recording logs. This means that whilst on the one hand, if you adopt social media or modern digital methods of communication as your normal format, the business of discussing and making placements with clients and candidates is obviously a whole lot easier. That's why you're doing it. And thus, more productive. That's the second reason you're doing it. But on the other hand, the chances that proper records will not be kept and processes for completing logs not properly followed means that risk significantly increases. Cloud-based systems lend themselves to central recording, but they have their limitations that were described on my payroll service just now. And with increased productivity, I'm sure you'll agree, comes increased administration. As productivity increases, the risk of problems increases. For example, securing payments from clients, demonstrating that a candidate has agreed specific terms at the right time, failing to make inquiries required by regulations, failing to get opt-outs in time when dealing with limited company contractors. That's a really big one. Breaching the agency worker regulations because you haven't checked out that the worker has already worked for the client and was in fact entitled to higher pay from day one. This is in addition to recognising the different legal issues. For example, who here thinks that opted out limited company contractors are out of scope of the agency worker regulations? I tell you, a lot of people do think that. It's been put out in the press, if that's the case. I can also tell you that it's not necessarily right. Similarly, teachers, for example, can be excluded from the agency worker regulations. Who believes they can't? If anybody wants to talk to me about that, I'd be delighted to talk to them afterwards about the work we've done with the National League of Teachers and also the Department of Employment on that. So I can tell you that teachers can be excluded from scope. So, thus it's more important than ever to have rules in place to ensure you're able to access the records and steps taken at all times, with all those steps obviously properly backed up. Remember, I'm talking about commercial compliance, not just legislative compliance. Now, then you have the issue of your own internal compliance. I've already touched on a few issues that can arise from using digital technology. So the starting point is to decide how you're going to use that technology, the facilities you're going to embrace, those that you're going to reject, and those that you might moderate to some extent. So let's say it's a good idea, you think it's a good idea to let your consultants use LinkedIn. Recently, plenty of recruiters have said to me, without LinkedIn, we wouldn't be able to survive. So I expect most of you here are thinking that LinkedIn is an extremely useful tool. But I would say as a tip, check the profile that your consultant has put up or wants to put up on the LinkedIn site is what you want as a business, not what the consultant wants personally. And you also need to be certain of how the consultant is intending to use LinkedIn. But bearing in mind that LinkedIn is really primarily for individuals to promote themselves. Yes, of course, it is also a business tool, and it can be used by businesses to enhance their profile for others to see. But the default settings, you're probably all aware of this, but in case you aren't, the default settings, if you register with LinkedIn, include a tick box which says that you are available for job opportunities. Fabulous. That means that your sales consultant, if they uncheck that box, means that they are available for job opportunities. What can that do to your business? Again, several of our clients, I've looked at their profiles on LinkedIn, and whilst I'm not connected with all of their members of staff, I've seen 3 or 4 where they've listed every single member of staff in their organisation. Because I'm not connected to those members of staff, I can't read the full name of the individual concerned. But if I wanted to hire an accounts controller, for example, who's also listed, what I would do is I would copy the partial name, accounts controller, bang it into Google, do a search on that, and guess what? The whole name comes up, and their profile comes up. You know their experience. They're working for, potentially, a competitor of yours. You need someone of that ilk to come and work for you. You know they've got the skill set. So what are you doing? You are opening up your organisation to be mined out by rec-to-rec organisations and competitors. So don't leave your business unprotected in that way. Similarly, Facebook, if you're using Facebook, I don't know whether you're aware, but if you have the Facebook app on your mobile phone, it hoovers all your data contact lists. Now, your data contact list might contain details of your clients. How Google then disperses that, how Facebook then disperses that information, I can't say. Whether it creates a problem or not, I can't say. But you can bet your bottom dollar that your clients and your friends, if you're the one whose mobile is has the Facebook app on it, did not give consent to you passing that information on to Facebook. So technically, there's a breach of data protection rules. Think about these things. You also all know that if you let your consultants use Twitter, that actually people can be sued for things they say on Twitter, and indeed can be prosecuted for things they say on Twitter. Similarly, if you allow clients to send out, if you allow your consultants to send out client terms of business using their iPads, what rules would you have in place to ensure that the fact that those terms are sent out are centrally recorded? That bears thinking about also. When should those recordings be logged? Immediately after the email's gone out? Should a copy be sent to your central server? You have to think about the right processes. And you have to think about these processes thoroughly in advance. And then your thoughts should be captured and included in the employment terms you have with your staff, and should be supported by those employment terms and policies. That is absolutely crucial to ensure that your process is followed, but also to protect the fundamental part of your businesses, which is your client base and base of contacts. Now, social media has been much discussed about, and of course is part of the Recruiter's Essential Toolkit. If you fail to embrace it, you're going to lose the edge. Your competitors are going to go ahead of you. But how easily, when we're talking about data protection in the broad sense, how easily can it be used to breach confidentiality rules or conduct unauthorized business? How easy can it be used to retain contacts with clients after a consultant has left your business, when the right to deal with that particular client vests in you because of the terms you've agreed with the consultant? And the answer to that question is, I'm sure you'll agree, it's very easy. In very, very few cases in relation to this. There's only one real case that stands out. I can talk to you about that afterwards if you'd like me to. This means that it's crucial to achieve your own internal compliance. You have an understanding of what can happen, and include protective measures in your policies, particularly in your contracts of employment. Making sure, of course, that they're all properly accepted by your employees. And in that respect, sorry to harp on about process, but you should have a process even for that, to make sure that when you've handed out the contract of employment, it is signed and it does come back, and it's not just left to drift in the ether. Commercial compliance also is, and that is your business effectively, can be enhanced if your commercial compliance can be seen by the outside world. What do I mean by that? Namely by your potential clients and candidates. So if you have your policies adhered to by your sales consultants or researchers giving out, for example, on LinkedIn or Twitter, the professional message that you want your business to be known by, this can only enhance your standing. Your compliance should therefore deal with issues that others are sensitive about. For example, anti-discrimination. Your business is not discriminatory. An overt diversity policy. And deal with things like your general conduct in order to underwrite your proposition. We all know the world's a transparent place. Something posted by a member of your staff will be seen, and whilst on the one hand it might support your proposition, on the other hand it could undermine it if it appears to demonstrate your own inappropriate business culture. You don't want that. All social media sites, and believe me, I've looked at the terms of business, because I am a completely alien person, obviously. I've looked at their terms of business. All of them allow visibility, retention of information, whether or not you still remain signed up to them. So whatever is posted up there creates an indelible digital footprint with the potential for long-lasting damage if you're not appropriately careful. So you have to make sure you have the right policies in place and also monitor compliance with that policies. How you monitor Twitter, Facebook, all the rest of it is down to you. Talk to social media experts about that, but have your policies in place. So, in conclusion, properly thought through commercial compliance, as I've described, will bring significant benefits. Secure fees, protect information, present your business in the best possible light. And if you achieve all of that, it's going to add to the bottom line on your P&L. And in addition, it will enhance the value of your business as a capital asset. If you don't do it, the opposite could well happen. Now, I'm sure I've touched on areas that you've already considered, but I hope I've given you some more areas as well to think about. And you can see the concept of commercial compliance in the round. As I said at the beginning, my business has been in the business of advising and supporting recruiters in all the areas I described for just over 15 years. We, in fact, have a niche role in the industry. All the services that we provide are targeted at helping our clients achieve that commercial compliance that I've mentioned. And whether that is terms of business, review of your own client terms, releasing up time to give you insurance-backed advice, practical process guidance to meet intended compliance objectives which you set, or we can help set if you're interested, checking out how you're operating, checking out your employment processes and documents, whether you want answers to quick questions through our helpline, or generally the whole range of services that we provide to achieve that commercial compliance that we think all businesses really are aiming for. On our helpline, by the way, we don't charge 15-minute time blocks, we charge for the time you spend, a 3-minute call, a 3-minute charge. Very simple. Now lastly, I did want to say, as you might have noticed on the first slide, I'm also chairman of the Association of Recruitment Consultancies. I hope that you have some idea now, if you were ever thinking about joining our association, which I would very much encourage you to do, to take forward the programme we have to improve the recruitment platform in the UK. You'll see where we are coming from. Lawspeed is, I'm asked about what's Lawspeed's role with the association. We're integrated into the Association of Recruitment Consultancies. Think Apple Mac, single operating system, and compare that with Windows, which is built on a DOS platform. Different things that don't operate so efficiently, in my view anyway, as the Apple Mac platform. I'd love to talk to you about membership and so on. There's a list there of the advantages, webinars, training. I think that's on everyone's lips at the moment. How do you get training for your organisation? Immediate access helpline. We only represent recruiters. Unfortunately, we don't represent suppliers because we think that we should be doing the right thing for recruiters only. And we're lobbying to improve the recruitment platform. I'd love to talk to you about how we're doing that. We have a flat fee structure. You've got 10 offices, you're paying the same fee as someone with one office. You have 1,000 consultants, you're paying the same fee as somebody with one consultant. And we have really, really good rates. Now, rounding up, I hope that I've covered off, and I'm just about running out of time now, but I will take a couple of questions. Points I raised at the beginning. What is commercial compliance? It's not a rigid set of rules, it's a commercial combination, its importance. I hope I've given you some indicators of steps you could be thinking about to achieve that compliance. Therefore, how to protect your business, how you therefore secure profitability. And I've told you about some of the ways our business can help you achieve those objectives.